Good morning. I'm Dr. Eduardo Mayorga. I have no conflict of interest to this group. The objectives of this presentation are that by the end of the presentation, participants will be able to list all the main factors you must take care of when you're preparing a webinar, and access a mind map with links to multiple training resources. Finally, apply all these several recommendations to improve user satisfaction when you run your own webinars. Many times I get this question, which webinar software should I use? Well, there are a lot of webinar software. Personally, I use Zoom, and the examples I give here will be mostly on Zoom. In the past, I've tried BlueJeans, I've tried WebEx, and maybe some other one that doesn't appear here. But Zoom is the one I like best. Meet from Google is another one you can also use. I suggest using Zoom. It's the one that's most used and has a lot of features that others do not have. I will be talking first, describing what you will find in the mind map, then talk a little bit about equipment, how to look your best in the camera, how to start interactivity and why use it, some topics about security, and how to record and edit the post-production of your webinar. So the first thing is the mind map. This I will go into detail later, but basically in this mind map you will find all, or practically all, the information you need to set up a webinar with Zoom. It has three areas, one for presenters, one for hosts, and some miscellaneous recommendations. As you open the branches, more branches are open, and at the end of all the branches you will find links to specific instructions on how to do what appears in the branch. Equipment. Use always a cable connection. Wi-Fi connections are not as stable as with cable, so always plug in a cable that comes from the router into your computer. Make sure the speed you have is good enough. There are many places you can test it. This is a good link. It's www.speedtest.net. This will allow you to see how fast your internet is at the time of the presentation. I recommend using two monitors. I usually use my laptop with which I handle all the different windows. I use the second screen to share, so this way people do not see everything else you have on your screen. This what you see here is my phone. I always recommend connecting a device like your phone to the same webinar as a participant. This will allow you to check what participants are seeing on their screens. The other thing this phone is useful is for in case you lose connection in the computer. I do not connect my phone to the Wi-Fi. I take away Wi-Fi and I keep the phone on data. So if there is a loss of power or a loss of the connection, my phone will still keep me connected to the webinar. You must remember to make this participant in the phone a co-host, because if not, if your connection drops, all the webinar will drop. There are some things that you can do for your image to appear better. In the Mindmap, you will get a link to a very good presentation in YouTube where this person gives all the recommendations. But basically, remember to use a background, either an image or blur, so that things happening behind you do not appear. Also, you have to work a little bit with illumination. Lighting is different if you have it from the top. You can see you get a lot of shadows, or if you have it from the front, like in this case and in my case. You can use a lamp behind your computer to get this illumination, or a window. And there are special devices like these that connect to your computer to get power and provides the light you need. This is the kind of device I use. You can see the setup here with the light. Sometimes I move the light here so it goes straight into my face. Another tip, if you're wearing glasses, to avoid reflections. In this case, I think my reflections are not very high, but if you're wearing glasses, you may want to tip your glasses a little bit forward, so in that way no reflections are shown. Try to position your camera at the same level of your eyes. If not, you will be getting an image from bottom up that do not look good, especially if you're using a phone. People used to hold it below their eyes and the faces do not look nice on screen. Interactivity is something you have to plan for in every webinar you give. In this case, because you're not all connected to the webinar, I will not be able to give an example on how it works, but probably you have all seen it. It's very important to add interactivity because it helps evoke, when you ask a question, it helps evoke previous knowledge on the participants, and this will determine the learner's knowledge. Because of their answers, you and them will know how much they know about the topic, and they will help them identify false assumptions when you give the correct answer. But most important of all, having people ask questions, answer questions, makes them connect the new knowledge you're giving them with the old one they have. Zoom has different ways to generate interactivity, but the one we use most is the multiple choice that you have to set beforehand. We'll see this later. And you're able to set up the question. Participants just tick on this, and then you can share and comment on the results. There are two types of questions. You can set up single choice and multiple choice. Multiple choice allows them to choose more than one answer. For example, if you set up, I don't know, the names of several animals, tick the two animals you like best, so they can do this. The chat is another useful tool when you make open-ended questions. If during your interactivity, you make an open-ended question, you can either let people answer using their microphones or using the chat window. When you do open-ended questions, try to make sure there are short answer open-ended questions, so it's easier for them to put an answer into the chat. And the chat has the advantages over the microphone that people simultaneously are giving your answer and things go faster. I usually use the microphone when I want people to answer a longer question that has a longer answer, or give their opinion on some of the topics we are doing. Breakout rooms are also a very handy way to generate interactivity. What breakout rooms allows you, like in face-to-face meetings, is that if you have a big group, you can split it down into smaller groups, where everybody, when you send them to the room, they just meet, in this case, for example, in a room of 4. So all these now are divided into 4 rooms of 4. They discuss among themselves, and when we bring them back, they, taking a turn, one room at a time, they can give their conclusions of the discussions. Security is another issue you have to take care of. Let's see some security features now. One is use a unique ID for your webinars or your public meetings. We will see later where you can find instructions for this. Also, always protect access to your webinar with a meeting password. This is important so that people that you do not want cannot get into your webinar. Also, create a waiting room. So when you start the webinar, you can take a look at people in the waiting room, make sure if you need to check their names, and just allow in the ones you want to. Make sure the settings in your webinar are set that only the host and the speakers can share their screens. If at any time some of the participants need to share the screen, you can give them permission for that. Never publish publicly the link in Facebook or anywhere. We recommend setting up a registration, whether it's a meeting or a webinar. In this way, people have to put in their email and all their data to get the link to attend the webinar. This is also good because you get a list of participants that are interested in your topic, so you can use this list to later send them news on new webinars you will be giving. This is a recommendation that some give. I usually do not do this, but you can always lock the meeting once it starts if you do not want any more people going into it. I usually leave it open because always you have people that are late and come in late. Remember that if someone is interfering with a webinar, just opening their mic, or you can always get rid of them. You will see how to do this also when you go to the Mindmap and see all the technical details on how to do this. And finally, disable sharing screen and disable annotations to the participants. And if you want them to use it at any time, allow them during the webinar. Finally, in this first part, we'll talk about the post-production of the recording. When you run a webinar, even if many people register for it, usually it's around half the people that really registered attend the webinar. So it's good to record it and then edit it and then put it online. This allows people that were not able to attend to watch it. There are two software I recommend for this. One is Screencast-O-Matic and the other one is Camtasia. Screencast-O-Matic is the one that is simpler to use. It's very, very easy to use. You do not have to have technical knowledge on this. Usually many of our webinars are edited by my secretary that is not technology savvy, but she can come up with a nice post-production. Camtasia it has a little steeper learning curve, but it's much better. You can do a lot of things with Camtasia. You can add questions in between that participants will answer when watching the recording, and it's really a tool I clearly recommend. Why use these kind of tools? Because if your webinar has lasted an hour and you put it on YouTube, maybe people will listen to it from start to end. But if at any time they want to come back, it's to see some part of it, it's very difficult for them to find the part they're looking for. So the software that we work with allows to set up a table of contents. Also, both allow to set up the transcript. So on the side you can see the text of what is coming out through the microphone. This is an example with Screencast-O-Matic, where you see here the thumbnails of the slides, and if you want to jump to any part of it, you just click here on the number and this will take you to this part. This is the transcript. People watching can go from notes, that is the side menu, to transcript, to read, and they can also jump here to different slides. Transcript is useful especially when people attending your webinar do not have English in this case as their first language. People also get a way to advance or go back in 10-second jumps. And very important, they can choose the speed. This allows to speed up the presentation or to slow it down. For example, persons that have trouble understanding the language can slow down the presentation. People that already know a lot about what you're saying can speed it up to twice the speed. So if a presentation lasts for an hour, they can go through it in just half an hour. Now, please take a photograph of the whole screen, and also if you want to go to the Mindmap now, you can use your QR reader to go to the Mindmap I'm going to show in a minute. So in this mind map, you will find almost any recommendation you need to set up a successful webinar with Zoom. It's divided in 3 parts, one for presenters, one for hosts, and some miscellaneous tips in the last. To see what's inside, you just have to click at the end of this and other branches will start appearing. So for presenters, these are the recommendations. Many of these are also for the host. So to go through the map, just start reading the branches. For example, here, set up your equipment. More branches open. And a summary of the recommendations you've seen in my presentation appear here. These little arrows at the end are links that will take you usually to the support area of Zoom, where you can see in detail what is needed. The same for all the rest. Recommendation as using a headset, how to test your audio, review how to share your screen, etc. Here you will find the recommendations you saw in the presentations, and also links that take you either to support or other resources to learn how to do it. Then here more recommendations on how to participate. You can see here, use a microphone when you speak, unless your laptop has a good microphone working. Reduce distractions, for example. Recommendation on where to sit or stand. Make sure your camera is steady, etc. Recommendations on screen sharing. Then for hosts, all tips on security, all the controls, some housekeeping recommendations you have to give participants. Here, for example, we say, will you be checking the chat window? It's usually useful to have someone checking this for you, so you can focus on talking. So if something comes up in the chat, your assistant can let you know about that. Always add a reminder at the start of your presentation that says start recording. If not, many times you will realize you're into the webinar and did not start recording it and lose opportunities to share it online. Here you will see how to schedule a webinar, how to share a meeting, and links to the documents that tell you how to use this. Finally, in miscellaneous, you will get the links for post-production. You will see this will take you to the site of Screencast-O-Matic. This will take you to the site of Camtasia. You can also stream your webinar. This means that not only people connected to Zoom can see it, but also you can stream it through, for example, Facebook. This is or YouTube. This is useful when, for example, in your room you only can have 100 participants and there are more people interested in watching it. So you can do this. Then here, this is good for you to review. Usually we use meetings, but Zoom has another option that it's using the webinar software. there are differences between them. Some of them is regarding the video sharing, the screen sharing, especially the capacity. In meetings, you get up to, usually with a free license, up to 100, but you can take it up to 1,000. If you're expecting more, you can go into webinar. Usually, we use meetings for this, except in some exceptions, and we do not want people to be using the microphone very, very big. We use the webinars. And finally here, more resources and tips from different universities that use Zoom, and where you can find the tips they give to their users. Okay, so I hope this Mindmap will be useful to you. If you have any questions, you can write to me. My email is mayorgaedu@gmail.com. This is mayorgaedu@gmail.com. So summarizing, I think the most important thing of all this presentation is the link to the Mindmap, which I really recommend you to go to, because this will help you to get all the details you need to set up a good webinar. Remember, when using the equipment, there are two important things to do. One is to connect to internet using a cable and not the Wi-Fi, and the other one is to use 3 devices. The one, for example, your laptop, where you have all what you're going to show on screen, a second screen where you just put in what you want to share, so participants do not see a crowded personal screen, and third, a phone that has 2 objectives. One, allow you to see what participants are seeing. Many times, for example, I start talking and I think I have my screen shared, but I haven't shared the screen. So I can see this in my phone because I will not be seeing my screen there. Remember the tips we give about how to set up the camera, the level it has to have, the illumination you have to try to get to look good. Always try to put interactivity into this, either using multiple choice questions. This is good because it goes very fast. And also remember, open-ended questions can be done and people can answer either using the microphone or the chat window. Review all the security recommendations we did so you do not have intruders spoiling your presentation. And get familiar with post-production of your recording. If you do this, you will get much more people watching your webinar after it has been run than during it.